I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Boulder Valley Board of Education for Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. Laura, could you please call the roll?
Belval. Benford. Here. Fuqua.
Here.
Garcia.
Here.
Gebhardt. Here. Marquis. Here. Myers.
Here. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello, everybody. We'd like to remind us all that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to create challenging, meaningful, and engaging learning opportunities so that all children thrive and are prepared for successful, civically engaged lives. Welcome back, board members. I hope you enjoyed your brief break in July, and we're all looking forward to the start of the new school year. Dr. Stevenson, welcome. We begin, as always, with the Superintendents Report.
Interesting, active couple of weeks. We did our administrative orientation last week, which was great fun, and I know a couple of you were there, and I appreciate your being there. It was fun to talk with all the principals and all the administrators and their excitement in the coming year. So thank you for joining us on that day if you were able to. Second of all, we've spent a lot of time in our new schools this week. And I know Kathy went with us today, and we toured the new schools with a group of our community members, and it was great fun to hear people talk about how they were beginning to see their vision become reality. So it was a great morning. We had a great time. So between new schools, between all the principals being back, between the teachers beginning to come back, the excitement is growing, and I am just very grateful to be associated with the staff as high quality as the Boulder Valley teaching and leadership staff. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Questions or comments for Dr. Stevenson coming out of her report? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is public hearing and public participation. The board recognizes the value of public comment on issues related to the operation of the schools. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. Limit your presentation to 2 minutes. If we go over the first hour, public comment will continue at the end of the meeting. And recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. The board president may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement that is unrelated to the business of the district or inappropriate for K-12 students. There is a lighting system on the podium. It turns green when your 2 minutes begins, turns yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and turns red at the end. When the light turns red, please wrap up your comments so that the board can hear from the maximum number of speakers. And we have several speakers on agenda items tonight, the first of which is Janeane Wire. Ms. Wire, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Stevenson. Tonight I'm speaking to you on behalf of BV Kid, as Karen Chout and Michael Busey couldn't be here. And I'm so pleased to be here tonight to speak in support of the Special Education Department and the proposal that they're bringing forward in front of you tonight. Michelle Brenner and Dennis Rastatter have done an excellent job of turning around a relationship that was at times hostile between the parents of dyslexic kids and the Special Education Department. This proposal has BV Kids' complete endorsement. From the start of the process through to the end, the Special Education Department has involved the community. They've requested community input and feedback. They've requested advice from dyslexia experts, as well as doing their own research. And we think this is a great proposal and a good step in the right direction. And so I'm asking that you do approve this proposal tonight and do everything in your power to make it a speedy and smooth implementation. And I'd also like to take my hat off now and speak as a parent of a dyslexic kid in special education. Despite advocating for him tirelessly last year, he fell further and further behind. And in May of last year, at the end of his second grade, he qualified for special education. His IEP, however, it's basically useless because there's really no services for special education to offer him unless this proposal is approved tonight. Currently, his IEP states that he will receive foundations instruction, which is a Wilson program, and it's an excellent program, but it is intended for the general education classroom. It is not intended for intensive one-on-one instruction. So we are forced as parents to accept this option for his IEP as there's no other choice. And unfortunately, as you've heard over this past year, my son's situation is not unique. In fact, it seems to be the norm for dyslexic kids in special education. So I'm asking you both as a BV Kid member and as a parent of a child with dyslexia in special education to please approve this proposal tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Dahl. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Welcome, Dr. Stevenson. This is my second time speaking to you on behalf of the underserved learning disabled students in BVSD, and my son is one of them. As a former elementary teacher in Jefferson County, having taught third grade at West Jefferson Elementary in Conifer and serving as the 504 coordinator and Wilson reading teacher at a Jeffco charter school, I've seen firsthand the difference that a research-based, multisensory, structured and sequential literacy program like Wilson can make in the lives of dyslexic students. According to the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, 64% of U.S. fourth graders, 66% of eighth graders, and 63% of 12th graders are not reading at grade level. 80% of our students with learning disabilities are dyslexic. All evidence that this wait and hope approach does not work. So these students must be caught early. There must be strategies and techniques in place for them as early as kindergarten. Implementing early screening followed by an MSL program such as Wilson is a huge step in the right direction, and it will help close the gap between those that can and those that can't. Teachers at all levels should be trained on how to know the indicators for their grade level, because those indicators can be noticed in every grade and every subject. So I ask you to please give careful consideration to the options we have before us. As a Wilson-trained teacher, elementary reading teacher, dyslexia therapist, and a parent of a struggling reader, I can honestly validate a decision such as this one yielding a worthy outcome, not just for our LD students, but for all of our students in BVSD. So this is not a waste of funding. It's not a decision that we will regret down the road. And the only regret we will all have is that we did not initiate it sooner. So Albert Einstein is quoted as saying, "Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act." And we have the privilege that years of research have given us about dyslexia to know that the multisensory, systematic, and structured literacy works for these readers, these struggling readers. So it's our duty to act and to make it available to all of our students in BVSD that qualify as early as kindergarten. So let us not let another year go by without this very important change. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Noel Davidson. Hello, thank you for coming.
I'm just going to give an example about my kids this summer. So I'm here tonight in support of the special ed proposal. I have he's going into first grade now with dyslexia, sensory processing issues, and ADHD. My youngest, my daughter, she's in preschool on an IEP for speech and OT. I believe she will also need literacy support with multisensory language support. I have seen her speech improve and respond only to a speech therapist that used multisensory approaches. My dyslexic son has attended summer school at Hillside, and he will continue this fall, mostly because we did not trust the district to give appropriate intervention. Cole has dramatically improved his rhyming skills, word family recognition, and phonemic awareness. He's learned how to sound out words on his own. He read a small book out loud at the dinner table for the first time ever, which never happened in kindergarten at Creekside. He was so proud of himself, and it nearly brought my husband to tears. He told us he learned that it was okay that he didn't know as many words as other kids because he was more creative. There's a sense of calm about him that was missing all of last year. And he's gaining confidence. More importantly, he's willing to try instead of giving up. This stuff can't be taught by counselors or by comics. It is about meeting the needs of our students to begin with. The special ed proposal is one step in the right direction. You need to approve this as enrollment in our school district is going down, and you are still missing identifying the 1 in 4 with dyslexia in Boulder, according to understood.org. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh yeah, the speakers appear to be obscuring the view of our members of the public who are participating, so if they can be moved, that would be great. And our next speaker is Nathalie Moyen. Good evening, Ms. Moyen. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for the time to speak with you tonight. My name is Nathalie Moyen. I'm a parent of a dyslexic child at BVSD. I'm also a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder and a board member of BV Kid. Tonight, I would like to speak to recognize some very positive outcomes at BVSD in the special education department led by Dennis Rastatter and Michelle Brenner. The special education department has worked very hard and sees the need for change in how dyslexics have been served. Aside from the very few kids that are lucky enough to receive Barton, there's no structured literacy program for students with dyslexia in special education. Ms. Brenner and Mr. Rastatter want to change this. They want to adopt the Wilson program in special education for grades K through 5. They want to start training special education teachers in these programs with the first group starting this September. This is amazing. This is really great news and a huge step forward. I hear the board will be reviewing this proposal tonight. Some of you board members may be skeptical about this, and this is okay, but just let the teachers decide. Give the tools in the teacher's toolbox to respond to the different needs of struggling readers, and in a year or so, you will hear the success. Please vote for the adoption of the Wilson program and let the teachers tell you. It's imperative to support the special education department tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Erin Nelson. Ms. Nelson, good evening. Welcome.
Hello, board members and Dr. Stevenson. My name is Erin Nelson. I have a child in BVSD who is dyslexic. He's also on an IEP. I'm also a member of BV Kid. I'm so happy to be up here tonight in support of something that our district is doing for our kids. It's a wonderful thing. And I want to thank the Special Education Department and specifically Michelle Brenner for listening to our concerns, working to get a structured literacy program in special education this year. By adopting a structured literacy program and training our special education teachers on what dyslexia is and how they can best help their students who have dyslexia, the Special Education Department has gone a long way in regaining the trust of our community. I'm urging the board to approve the adoption of a structured literacy program proposed by the Special Education Department tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wendy Kirkpatrick. Hello, welcome.
My name is Wendy Kirkpatrick. I'm a kindergarten teacher in BVSD and also the mother of 2 dyslexic children in BVSD. And I'm here tonight as a BV Kid member and a teacher and a parent to support Michelle Brenner in the Special Ed Department proposal to provide Wilson training to special education teachers and then have Wilson instruction to special education students who are dyslexic or who exhibit dyslexic behaviors. I've been spending time in my classroom this week, and I've told many of my colleagues about this proposal, and they are excited and in agreement. We all want the best possible interventions for all of our students. It's comforting to know that special education teachers will have training and that our special education students will receive explicit and systematic instruction in addition to the instruction that they receive in our general ed classrooms. I look back on my own journey with my own 2 children and to 3 years ago when Carter, my now going into 5th grade student, was identified with dyslexia. We met with the special education team at that time and principal and decided not to have him tested for special education because he would not have been guaranteed the explicit and systematic instruction he needed. Instead, we focused our energy on getting him the intervention outside of special education. This proposal is a win-win-win. Most importantly, it's a win for our kids. It's a win for teachers who care about those kids, and a win for parents trying to navigate that often difficult, messy, and emotional journey with dyslexia. I applaud Michelle Brenner and her team, and again, enthusiastically support the special education proposal to train teachers in Wilson and give kids on IEPs the instruction that they are entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final speaker on agenda items tonight is Laura Winfield. Good evening, Ms. Winfield. Welcome.
As you can see, I am Laura Winfield. Thank you all for hearing all the positive responses to your proposal for special ed and for going forward with this new intervention that kids in this district terribly need, every district needs. I am a SPED teacher by license. I am a reading intervention teacher by design. I have taught many dyslexic kids for the last 20 years here in the district, in Jefferson County, in Adams County, and I'm speaking from the heart. I'm a passionate person. I've been in this for a long time, and these kids need programs like Wilson, like Orton Gillingham, teachers that have training in this. This is helping all struggling readers, whether they have an IEP or whether teachers get this training on their own, which is highly possible. Everything about the trainings for reading interventions in a scope and sequence that really helps kids to learn is something that most teachers pursue on their own. And so it's great that you are taking the steps to put people in buildings who know what they need to teach kids. And you'll see results across the board, not only for your IEP kids, but the more people in your buildings who know the principles of these systems, they'll help every kid in every classroom. So I applaud all the work that's been done, the collaboration between BV Kids and parents, teachers and admin and the board, all very, very important. I was not able to attend BV Kids meetings until just recently because I work every afternoon until 7 o'clock teaching dyslexic kids. So I thank you so much for your time and all your efforts, and I can't wait to see you pass this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one speaker on non-agenda items. That's Fran Lyon. Good evening, Ms. Ryan. Welcome.
I'm Fran Lyon with Impact on Education, and I have a lot of titles tonight, one of which is I worked with a really terrific, fabulous guy named Don Orr 5 years ago, and every now and then a plan comes together, Don. We set out to envision what we needed in our facilities and had a very collaborative, engaged, healthy discussion for 14 months, and we had a couple of food fights every now and then, right, Don? But I gotta tell you, going to these schools today, I am fired up. Y'all really, really need to get out there. Kathy came along, and it was my privilege, Cindy, that you included me. You've got absolutely terrific managers. There are people out there 24/7. And if there's pushback on not opening the schools because, everything's not perfect, it's a good problem to have. We passed that bond, 63% of the community supported us, and the project managers, I'm gonna go right down the line, Rob and Don and Andrew sitting in the back, Kelly, Tiffany, these guys have been working with your librarians, your custodians, and when I hear about students with dyslexia, all those buildings are designed, Don, so beautifully to accommodate every type of learner. So I'm all jazzed up. It was our privilege to be part of that, and I encourage everyone to get out and see the schools. And every one of our schools has been touched with innovation money, and these women behind me are doing a terrific job. So we got to have a shout out because it was a 5-year plan, and I'm going to take a little longer. It's a 5-year plan, and I will tell you it was an aggressive construction schedule, Rob, and you pulled it off, and they need to be applauded. And then secondly, yeah. On a probably more serious note, but we just delivered on behalf of Impact on Education over 5,000 backpacks of school supplies to our kiddos. We do have a lot of children in every school building that needs some help, and shout out to Kathy and Tina for coming out and helping us, and Cindy was there. So again, we love to be in partnership with you all and look forward to this academic year.
Thank you very much. That concludes public hearing and public participation. The next item on our agenda is board communication. Board members, who would like to begin? Kathy?
So this will be a little bit of a repetition from what Fran just said, but now I have to return the shout out to Fran, because what Impact did with crayons to calculators every year is just amazing. And just the community engagement piece of it is really cool to see too, to see the parents and their kids there loading up backpacks. And a shout out to Fairview and Don Stansrud for allowing us to use the cafeteria. It worked actually reasonably well, I have to say, to be able to do it there. A shout out to your team of Ben and Hadley and Madison. I think I got that right. And I did this last year, but another shout out to Wendy Fiedler, who's always kind of shows up there and just keeps things going behind the scenes. And thank you, Dr. Stevenson, for showing up and supporting the team that was there. That was pretty cool to have you be able to see the work that's going on there. So thank you, Fran, and thank you, Impact. And the last day I was there, the teachers got to show up, and I didn't know that they got to do that. And I saw teachers hauling out boxes of supplies. It was actually pretty cool. So it was like a small garage sale, but you didn't have to pay anything, right, for teachers. So the fact that we're able to distribute that in a different way, and when I was there one time, there were even kids who showed up and were getting backpacks for their family and their friends, and were going along and trying to pick out whether their brother wanted the green backpack or the blue backpack. And so, I mean, it was just really a great community effort. So thank you, Fran. And then I did get to go on the trip today, and it was really awesome to see, in addition to the great work of Don and Rob and everybody, like we saw today with the principals. This has been a lot of work by the principals, by the staff in the schools, by everybody to get this done on the time frame that we did. I think they said that they had to do Meadowlark, which is twice the square footage, in the same time as they did Douglas and the other schools. And so the fact that it's come along as well as it has is pretty exciting. So just a shout out to everybody for the great work that's being done on that. And my harebrained idea that we'll see if we can follow up on is to get some of our elected officials out to see some of this, because I feel like in the work I've done around the state, there's a real misunderstanding of the quality and the necessity, I can speak, of good facilities to learning. And so just to get people out to understand what it looks like and what the innovative thinking is and how we can spread that across not just our own schools, but kind of as a leader in the state for what we think the new facilities of the 21st century need to look like. I think we can help be a leader on that. So I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to get some of our elected officials into these buildings, and it'll be really cool to see them in the buildings when the kids are there. I can't wait to see the kind of Christmas look on these kids when they get to come to a brand new school and see what it looks like. So, and then I wanted to do a quick shout out to Michelle and Dennis. It's really nice to have, thank you dyslexic parents, Janeane and Aaron and Wendy and Nathalie and everybody to come and to hear something positive. And so thank you for the hard work that you did. I know we still have a long way to go. I'm not suggesting this closes the chapter, but thank you for coming and being supportive. I think that's just great news. And I think that's, and I did have the honor of listening to Dr. Stevenson's welcome back to the DLT team last week. And it was, I mean, it's probably going to sound kind of corny, but I thought it was awesome. She weaves in The Wizard of Oz and Apollo 13 and a music video. And I don't remember the name of the story, but it was about a dog with a big heart. And by the end of the presentation, and you didn't fall over, they did a poor job of covering up the orchestra pit. And as any of you have seen Dr. Stevenson walk, her heels are like this tall and about this round, and there is a perfect gap that if she had stepped in, we wouldn't be sitting here with her tonight. So she did a great job of maneuvering herself across the stage. And by the end of her presentation, I was in tears because it was just trying to remind all of us why we do what we do and why we come back year after year in spite of very challenging odds and underfinanced schools and challenging circumstances to do the work that the employees of this district do. So thank you for inspiring all of us. I just wish that you had recorded it because there are a lot of people I think could have been inspired by that. And when I asked her, she said, "Oh, heavens, no, I don't want to hear this again." So, but you do have the music video, right, recorded?
Oh, the music video, I've already spread it across the district.
So if you haven't listened to at least the music video part, that can be inspirational to all of us. So thank you. It was great to see you there, Sam, as well. But thank you for getting us started on a very positive foot going forward. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thanks, Kathy. Other board members? Tina?
Yeah, I mean, just mostly echoing what Kathy said, but I missed the tour today, but I'm looking forward to seeing the schools when there are kids in them and seeing what the space and the learning looks like. And it's really exciting, and I want to thank Fran. I think she stepped out, but for her involvement in the passage of the bond and also for doing the crayons to calculators. I brought some 10-year-olds there, and I just hope that the backpacks have what they need to have in them. They got kind of creative with the way they were doing it, and so let's hope. And then the other thing is just wonderful to hear the support from BV Kids today for the proposal that is on later on in our agenda from special education. It's just a great place to see the parents and the staff coming together and doing what needs to be done for the kids who have dyslexia, and hoping that we can start accelerating improvements in that area. So thank you.
Thanks, Tina. Other comments, board members? Richard?
I want to thank the BV Kids parents for their persistence. I think it's been a long, long haul in terms of what you've been asking us to do, and I'm sure glad that that we had an opportunity to help out. But I do want to give Shelley a big shout out in terms of her persistence too, in terms of making sure that we get to work with dyslexic children here in the district. And I'm hoping that we have more families and parents that are as persistent as you all have been. So thank you so much. So I also want to mention, Sam, that October the 14th, we're doing the second annual Latino Parent Summit at KC Middle School, and I'm hoping that we'll see some of you there. And I've been charged with the responsibility of reaching out to Cindy to see if she will be there as one of our speakers like we had last year.
Absolutely.
Great, so I got that written down, and also seeking some support in terms of making sure this thing happens. And the support is going to be a little bit more in terms of just enthusiastic support, so we'll be talking about that later. So you're all invited. It'll be October 14th at KC Middle School. And last year, the district provided from 1 to 2 what we call a community cafe discussion. We'll be asking the district also to help us out with some of the presentations that the district did last year that was well received by the Latino community. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Other comments? Shelley?
Richard, what time is that?
It'll be from 9 to 3:45 or so.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have a flyer out.
Okay.
The Community Foundation sent out an email today, so I was hoping I received an invitation, so maybe they could forward that to the whole board, Richard.
Great. Shelley?
Yeah, I'm so happy that the BV Kid and our special ed department are in agreement with the proposal that's in front of us tonight. And just on that basis alone, on the basis of the agreement, I'm going to support it. It's definitely a step in the right direction, so thank you very much to the special ed department for bringing this proposal forward tonight. And thank you for making it happen so quickly this fall. That's really exciting that we could move that quickly and do that right away, because you've ensured, that this group of kids is going to get caught that's in special ed and get the help that they need. And that's really, really rewarding and exciting to hear. And not to put a damper on it, but the fact remains that a lot of our kids are struggling from the very beginning and will have struggled for a couple years before they get into special ed. So I'm still advocating for a universal screener in kindergarten so that those kids don't fall through the cracks, and structured literacy in general ed, because we know that it works not only for dyslexic kids but for Latino kids and all of our kids. So I hope that that's the next thing that we're celebrating together. And I'm just, and this is just a testimonial to what we can do when we work together. So I hope we continue to do that. So thank you very much, BV Kid, and thank you so much, Special Ed Department. I personally am so happy.
Thanks, Shelley. Tom?
Yeah, I would like to echo that. I think a lot has been said. I want to say a lot more. Also, thank you. It's good to hear some positive collaboration coming along. There's been last couple of years of contention and not working well together, and I'm glad we're starting to pull this together. And last June or so, when we were going through the budget, this is why I'd hoped that we would get this thing moving, and it is amazing that it's moving so rapidly, and I actually will be out for students in September, which is just a monumental undertaking and a huge accomplishment. I want to thank all of our staff and those that work with that and work with the parents for that accomplishment, because that's huge. And I'm also looking forward to the awareness training that we talked about, which should be coming next. I understand hopefully the board will hearing about that soon. And I, like Shelley, I want to continue working with screening and get our regular education kids, caught early before they have to go into special education, so that we avoid all that with them. So thank you so much for coming forward.
Thanks, Tom. I would echo that it was great to hear the BV Kids parents talk about a constructive relationship with the special ed staff. So I just echo those comments. Don Orr, is this your last board meeting? Oh, wow. Well, I know you told me last week you'll be watching every one of them going forward. I'm sure, yeah. But, I've learned there are many very challenging jobs in the district, and you had one of them for many years. So thank you very much. Several of us, I know it was like almost a month ago, how time flies, but we had a really great tour of the summer program at Columbine, and I just want to thank Mim Campos for facilitating that for us. We saw kids engaged in, very engaged in STEM-related learning activities, and I could just feel a difference from some of the other summer programs I had observed in the past in terms of the level of student engagement. So that was exciting to me, and look forward to hearing a report at some point about the outcomes of that summer program. So thanks to Mim for showing us around Columbine last month. And I just want to praise the Help Center again, because unsolicited comments coming to me from parents and staff about how well that has been run and how important it is for the families. I'm not sure who I should be acknowledging specifically.
You should acknowledge Leslie Stafford.
Leslie Stafford. Thank you very much, Leslie, and thanks to your team, because I've just been hearing great things about it. I think this is the second year we've done it. We continue to refine it, and a great service to our families. So thank you very much. I think... Yeah, and I did tour Douglas, although I couldn't make the bus tour. I got a tour of Douglas from John Wolfer, principal, and his excitement and the excitement he conveyed on the part of his staff was great to hear, and I was impressed by how flexibly, I guess what we used to call classrooms, and now they're called learning spaces. Is that the?
They have a variety of names. It all depends on where you were.
Well,
we call them learning studios.
Thank you. Well, how flexibly they had been designed to function as something resembling a traditional classroom, but also opening up to other areas, to larger areas, to combine classrooms. I think the flexibility that is built into these buildings, which I think we're going to hear something about in a minute, is really great. And so it was really fun to see what's new at Douglas, and I look forward to visiting our other new schools as well. So with that, I think we'll conclude board communication and move to the next item on our agenda, which is an update on the impact of the innovation projects that were implemented during the 2016-17 school year. Dr. Stevenson.
I'm going to learn this system yet. We have been very fortunate in Boulder Valley that we have individuals who are focused on innovation in our schools and in our classrooms. And when I first arrived and people told me that we actually had people doing innovation, I was quite amazed, because I came from a system where we would not have had the funding to have people working on innovation. But what I have discovered over the past couple of months is that they do incredible work. They work with the staffs, with the principals, with the community, and innovation is not just a word in Boulder Valley. It's a concept that runs deep into our souls, and we believe in it, and we think it's good for kids, and we are fortunate that have people that can attend to it. So, Tiffany, you are on, and I am very pleased.
Thank you, Dr. Stevenson, for that very kind introduction. President Fuqua, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity this evening to give you an update on some of the innovation work that we have happening in the district. So it's so exciting to hear Fran and some of you all speak to what you've seen out in our buildings and how these new spaces are really going to impact kids and just the great work in general that we have going on here in the district. Part of what we were hoping to speak to today was the facilities, which are certainly important, and as we've talked a little bit about the bond, being able to fund these innovative facilities is really an amazing aspect of the bond that, quite honestly, many of our peer districts have been very interested in learning from us. We've had visitors from all over the metro area come up to the district over the last few years to take a look and see what we're doing, how our processes and procedures work. So it's really exciting to have that leadership opportunity to share our work with others as well. Just a reminder before we start talking specifically about some of the spaces that our district, when we began this process of innovation about 2 years ago, really this time of year in August of 2015, we were working with Fielding Nair International. That's the design architectural firm for 5 of our schools right now, the 4 new schools as well as Centaurus High School. And part of the work that they did with our district to really ensure that we were thinking not only about facilities and innovative facilities, but also about the teaching and learning that would happen in these spaces. As a result of about 4 days and inclusion of district level, teacher level, and then building leadership level voices, we've developed these innovation guiding principles. So these have become very, very important to our work. They help us really to think not only about the amazing things that we can do with space, but what are our true beliefs about innovative teaching and learning practices. So we've grounded much of our design around space in the innovation projects that we'll share with you in these guiding principles. So while the new space and things are amazing, we don't want them to just become the stuff. We really want to think about the teaching and learning that's happening in the buildings too. So to kind of share an update of the basic work that we've been doing in innovation over the last 2 years, we've heard quite a bit today about those exemplar schools, the new buildings, Creekside, Douglas, and Emerald. Meadowlark, which is the school in Erie, is the first Erie school in Boulder Valley. And then Centaurus is going through a fairly major remodel. So again, those bucket of schools were the group that was designed by Fielding Nair International and then also finalized in cooperation with one of our local architects. So those schools are innovative by design wall to wall. So we're very excited about those. The second bullet that we'll talk to a little bit this evening, and we're really excited to have a school actually here to share their work with you, are innovation projects. So as part of the bond funds, the schools that aren't being rebuilt have a allocation that they get to invest in an innovative learning space. So we work with those schools to develop a plan for implementation of that space. That plan has to include alignment to an innovation guiding principle, alignment to the mission or vision of the Boulder Valley School District. Our schools create learning outcomes for these spaces. So what is it that we hope to see happening with student learning? And then a plan for measuring that as well. So how will we know if what we're hoping to have happen is actually happening? Our elementary school projects have had $200,000 to invest. Our middle schools have had a $400,000 fund. The K-8s have a $600,000, and the high schools have had an $800,000 fund by which they've invested. So we'll be excited to share that with you this evening as well. A new thing that we rolled out last year in 2016 and 2017 was our innovation cohort, and that was a big part of our professional learning, that we provided our innovation projects in order to actually implement those plans. So the 4 new schools, we've talked quite a lot about those today, and we're incredibly excited about the possibilities for those buildings and what we see happening with teaching and learning there. We'd be happy to give more detail on those schools as well, so if there are questions about the innovation wall-to-wall schools, we can answer those at the end. But we really wanted to talk tonight in more depth to the work of those smaller projects, our innovation projects that we have happening with those funds throughout the district. So the cohort was created as a way to support our schools during the implementation of these spaces. So once the spaces are constructed, this cohort works to provide support for school teams. So it's the school leader, their teacher librarian, and a team of teachers from each building that attend the cohort, and actually moving forth with measuring the impact. So we had our outcomes that we created as part of the plan for students, and now what are we seeing in terms of measurement towards growth towards those outcomes? The data was part of our cohort discussions. What things are you seeing in your schools? How do you know it's working? We had a lot of great discussions about that throughout the year, and you'll see some evidence of that coming shortly. And then we also asked each of our schools to create a product. That product was a digital story of their innovation journey. So that was really exciting, and we're going to share with you one of those digital stories that will detail what that journey looked like for this school this year. So we'll talk a little bit more about what those included as well. This cohort structure in BVSD is not something that's really new to professional learning. This particular cohort, the innovation cohort, was designed collaboratively between innovation, the educational technology department under the leadership of Kelly Sane, and also with the instructional services and equity department. So it was definitely a team design. The cohort structures in the past have been led through our 21st century teacher cohorts and also leadership cohorts through Kelly Sane since 2012. So the readiness for this kind of work in BVSD has been happening for a number of years, and I absolutely think it's a large contributor to the success that we've seen with this innovation cohort this year. We're also modeling some innovative practices with the cohort, so people are experiencing blended learning as part of their work within the innovation cohort. That means we have 4 days of face-to-face learning with those schools that participate in the cohort. And then we also have an online component to the work too. So we read a book this year as part of our work in the cohort called The Innovator's Mindset. And we had blended online discussions across all of the schools that were participating in the cohort this year in between those sessions. And those digital stories are really exciting, so we're excited to share those with you. The big question that our schools in the cohort focused on throughout the year is, how is innovation shifting the story of learning in our school? So innovation being the funds and the implementation of a space, but how is that, again, impacting the learning practices that we're seeing? So what did those digital stories contain? What were the expectations? What did we hope to see? These were the components that we hope to see consistent across all of the stories. We wanted to know, how would you respond to that question as a school? How is innovation shifting the story of learning? What process did you guys use to decide on the use of your funds? We asked our schools to think about their teaching and learning outcomes as part of the space, and then their process for gathering evidence. So what impact did they see? And then finally, we asked them to do some reflecting on their work. How did they progress towards their goals? What were some of the successes they experienced, as well as some challenges? These new spaces provide a unique set of challenges as well. It's a different kind of thinking about organizing space and students. And then finally, what were their next steps towards continual growth? So as an example, we wanted to invite the Southern Hills Middle School principal, Siobhan Gloster, and her teacher librarian, Regina Hoskins, who are leaders of their innovation team, to share their digital product, their digital story of innovation at Southern Hills Middle School with you this evening. So, ladies.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, board, for having us here tonight. So Southern Hills, we designed a website for our innovation journey, and one of the things that we focused on was what was our hopeful outcomes. One of the focus at Southern Hills is 21st century skills that are embedded in the curriculum. So when you look at what were our desired outcomes, they were based around the collaboration, communication, creative thinking, and critical thinking. So we were able to bring those together. What was really interesting about our journey is that we really tried to make it a very collaborative effort. So we brought in all of the staff. We created an innovation cohort within our building, and it was led by teachers. I was just a member of that committee. And then we asked the question, what do we want students doing that they're currently not able to do in the four walls of your classroom? And we left that be kind of our guiding point to making our decisions, because it's really easy when you get into this and here's your $400,000 and they start throwing all this stuff at you to get caught up in the bells and the whistles and the glitter and the sparkle and the ooh and the ah of the items. But it was really important for us to keep focused on what is it we want kids doing. What kind of learning are they going to get involved in? We did use Campfire to Holodeck is one of our research materials that we read about, and really focused on students and learning space and where they learn best. So you can see from the map of our library and how we kind of took that and made different areas within our library. We created this idea of the cave. So again, a library for a place to come to reflect, for quiet work, for reading, that type of thing. Also wanting to look at this idea of the watering hole, and that's around collaboration. We took what was just a regular conference room and turned it into a collaboration space with writable desks, writable walls, and it getting thinking out of the head and out into where a space where people can see it. We then created the just a regular kind of campfire area where you could have instructional space, as well as a presentation space and green rooms, so that kids can create. And it's that idea of the space of life, so that it's a meaningful learning. It's bringing the outside in, as well as taking the work that students are doing and sharing it with the outside. And that was our presentation space. We have lots of before and after pictures that we included in our journey. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we were doing is actually asking teachers and students as far as how they were using the space, because that was our focus all along, is we wanted to make sure that our goals were being met with how the space was being used. And as you can tell by some of the pictures, some of the big feedback is about how welcoming it is, how open it is, how students can come in and they can truly find a space and a place that they learn best in our library. So with the data that we collected, we have some things that you can share as far as what are they currently doing in that space? What are some of the ways you are currently using the space? Not only did we do that from students, but also for staff. And some of the feedback that we received, it was pretty good as far as, can you focus while in this space? It was overwhelmingly yes. And do you wish your classes spent more time in this space? And that's a big indicator that students really are truly enjoying the time that they have in the library area. And again, I know Regina can speak to that as far as students coming in and just watching them go out and just find a space and that they learn best. So we have a video that we're going to share with you that probably does this better than any of us can speak to. And some of this also was from our generous PTO, so I want to take the opportunity to thank them, because we did, beyond the $400,000 innovation fund, we were able to use some PTO funds for like the bikes that you see here. And one of the additions this year is going to be an outdoor learning space, so that we can take kids outside to have a classroom outside fully. And here we go. And then just to kind of finalize already using that space as we're moving forward. Today, I set it up for our first day back with teachers and using the space. We have them creating tomorrow. We have them collaborating tomorrow. We have some presentation tomorrow. So again, just really being able to utilize the area in the best way that we can. Moving forward, we have on our agenda is our PD is focused around project-based learning. Again, getting kids actively learning and engaged in the process of learning. So that's kind of our little journey.
And so I'm going to invite you guys to stay nearby because we may have some questions.
Okay.
So we've seen an example of a secondary, and thank you so much for your time this evening and for sharing Southern Hills Journey. We did want to also show a very quick example of an elementary school. So Alicia Sanchez International School is another one of our schools that was in the cohort this last year. We're going to show you just the video they created. They did present a lot of other data during their presentation of their story, but the video is very touching and heartwarming, and we wanted to be able to share an elementary product with you guys as well. So this is Alicia Sanchez Elementary. So I'm hopeful that these few examples have been able to give you just a small glimpse at the successes and the incredible impact that these spaces are having on students, on our teachers and their learning. It's just been a pleasure. I know that I'm speaking for myself and Kelly Sane as well, who really supported this adventure this year with the cohort with her team. It was just thrilling to watch the impact that these spaces have had on kids. So this was our group that completed this cohort this year, so you've seen two of those examples. The PDF that's in Board Docs does have hyperlinks out to all of the other products, so if you'd like to see what any of those other schools created to demonstrate their digital journey throughout this last year, they're there for you to explore and take a look at. Upcoming in this year, we have a new group that will be joining the cohort and thinking about their own story of learning and innovation, and that group consists of the following schools: Aspen Creek K-8, El Dorado K-8, Louisville Middle School, Manhattan Middle School, Community Montessori, Pioneer Elementary, and Ryan Steam Elementary School. So we're excited to see how these stories work for our new cohort this year. It's been a really great journey to see how each school has really individualized what their best hopes were for these spaces and how they've measured their impact. I also wanted to recognize Don Orr, and I know he's gotten a lot of shout outs tonight, but his leadership and his mentorship of me have meant a lot, and so Don, we're really going to miss you in BVSD, and we wish you the best of luck. We know you won't be far. So thank you, Board, for your time this evening. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tiffany. Board members, any questions for any members of the team? Richard?
I just want to thank you for the presentation. It was marvelous. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And I'm glad to see there's a lot of stuff going on at Southern Hills. And at Alicia Sanchez. I really appreciate that the equity piece is in there too, so thanks a lot.
At what point will we be able to link or examine any improved academic outcomes from our investment in these innovative environments and the professional development that accompanied it?
That's a good question. So some of the schools did design learning outcomes that had more of an academic focus. In terms of measuring, straight reading increases or scores, I'm not sure that any of that data has been correlated one-to-one just yet. It will be something that we could take, considering how we might look at that data, where we could find some of those correlations. But with each school measuring those individual outcomes that they've developed, some of those do correlate directly to student learning. Most often they're more bigger concepts like students engaging in critical thinking skills or an inquiry. Part of the work that we do with schools when they design their plan is we've created a matrix that aligns our innovation guiding principles to use of space and also to our educator effectiveness standards. Those are our teaching practice standards. And so we've looked at the highly effective teaching practices and how those align with the space. So it's a great question, Sam, and I'd love to start to think through ways that we might look at those outcomes that were designed and targeted specifically towards learning, and those that were targeted more on the broader success skills.
Right.
We have quite a few of those, yeah.
Thanks. Other questions, board members? Yeah, Tom.
So what are some of the lessons you've learned from this group that you'll carry over to the next group?
So, thank you. Thank you. I say thank you a lot to our first group that went through this whole process. They were really our trailblazers. So they were the first group to experience the proposal process. They were the first group to experience all the procurement things that have to happen with implementation of these spaces, as well as the first group to experience the professional learning that happens in thinking about the measurement of those spaces. So we've already considered a few tweaks and changes to the cohort for next year and how we might scaffold things a little bit differently. I think we're all very pleased with the outcomes, but are thinking about ways that we might better support schools and also next steps. So for our schools that have finished the innovation cohort, how are we going to continue to think through next steps with them? I think in terms of other lessons learned, we just know a lot about what we didn't know when we started. So our procurement processes have changed pretty drastically. The proposal processes we feel like are pretty systemic at this point in time, so that's a real big excitement. I think having finished spaces and experts in these spaces in the schools who are living and able to living and breathing what's happening and able to speak with our other teachers and leaders. We've implemented a tour cycle for schools who are upcoming into the design phase to be able to visit schools and see what other schools are doing, talk with them about their planning, their outcomes, their experiences in the innovation cohort. So I think biggest lessons learned were our trailblazers really provided a great service to the district, and now having the examples and the past experiences to build upon is going to be key for us moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Other questions or comments, board members? Well, hearing none, thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update and appreciate everybody's work. We'll move then to the next item on our agenda, which is action items, consent grouping, including 8.1 personnel items, 8.2 approval of minutes, June 27th, 2017 regular meeting, 8.3 approval of the architectural design and engineering services contract for bond-funded improvement work at Fireside Elementary School, 8.4 approval of the architectural design and engineering services contract for bond-funded improvement work at Cole Elementary School, 8.5 approval of the architectural design and engineering services contract for bond-funded improvement work at Netherland Middle Senior High School, 8.6 update of board resolution number 15-03 purchasing dollar thresholds for bond program projects, and 8.7 grant planning and program evaluation investigating SEL competencies, CU Boulder, U.S. Department of Education. Are there any items board members would like to pull from the consent grouping? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve the consent grouping. Motion from Richard. I need a second. Second from Tina. Are there any items board members would like to discuss or ask questions about? Shelley?
8.6 and 8.7.
Go ahead.
So could someone explain the need for 8.6, the board resolution here, to modify the,
it looks like Bill can do that.
Bill Sutter, welcome.
Is leaving. That's why.
Not good enough.
It just has to do with the title of Don's previous position and Rob Price's position. So it's just a name change. Nothing else is changing in there.
The thresholds aren't changing.
No.
You're talking about the name on the purchasing.
Yes.
Thank you.
The title of the position that has that signing authority.
I am reading the resolution. It looks to me like you're increasing the approval level for the superintendent and also for the board. That's not true here? Usually we have to approve $100,000 or more, and this is saying we would approve $250,000 more?
For the bond, it's always been at that higher level.
Oh, okay. It's just for the bond?
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. That's my question.
Thanks, Bill. Shelley, you had a question about 8.7 as well?
Yeah. Let me get back to that one. So, I remember when KSL came in and did their analysis of all the different social emotional programs that we have in our schools. But I didn't know that we were offering PD in this culturally responsive mindfulness, kindness, and compassion in the classroom curriculum. And I'm wondering if somebody can say a little about that. And then also, just more about what this research is going to look like and what data is going to be collected and what's going to happen with that data. That would be helpful.
Sam, can you talk about the professional development? Yes. What data will be gathered? We may need to get that to you later this week.
Welcome, Sam Messier.
My pleasure. The professional development that's happening in conjunction with that grant is happening during our professional learning pathways days. So those are happening on the in-service days in August, September, and October, which are 3 consecutive half-days. And teachers self-select into a course that they want to take. So that particular pathway, I think, has about 15 to 25 teachers who have self-selected into that as an area of focus and interest that they would like to explore.
And so it hasn't started yet?
That's correct.
Okay. And it looks like if we're already doing PD in this, is this what we're trying to implement and eventually?
So I would say that this is one approach around social and emotional learning that we're exploring and trying to leverage the resources that we have here locally at CU to explore how that could be a way that we can do this that's culturally responsive and that also addresses social and emotional learning needs for students. So it's something that we've been collaborating on and developing together. The person who's been working most closely with CU has been Bridget Mutter in the Department of Student Assessment and Program Evaluation.
Yeah, I see that, thanks. So it looks like this grant's going to be used to analyze the 59 different programs that are going on in our schools, determine what's working, and then leverage that as a best practice throughout the district. Is that the goal of this research project?
So I have to confess that I would have to do a little bit more research to answer that question for you accurately.
My only question is, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me that we would do that. The question is, have we already found the answer and we're rolling out PD to something that we don't even know which program is effective yet? So I guess I'd just like to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I think that I would consider the professional learning that's happening as part of that grant to be a pilot. That we're not saying that that is an approach that we're committing to for the long term, but that we're piloting it with a small group of teachers that are interested in that particular focus.
Okay. And would it be possible to get a link to that curriculum to look at?
I will check into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
Did you, Spenford, did you want data? Did you want to know what kind of data is being collected?
Yeah, I do, but I can submit an RFI if that's easier. Yeah.
I can handle it.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
And we have a couple of follow-ups, Tina, then Kathy.
Yeah, I just, I am very supportive of this, and I think it's great that we're going to go through an evaluation process with CU, but we do have a lot of schools with different needs, and one of the publications that the CU Behavioral Group had come up showed programs based on the most acute needs by school. And my hope would be through this process that there would be more of a menu of items rather than one item. And I know consistency is important, but I would hope that the end goal wouldn't be one thing. And I'm trying not to be too prescriptive, but I just am a little cautious. So that's just a general comment.
Let me just do a check. What you're asking about is, are we going to make sure that schools have choices when it comes to social emotional learning?
Yes.
Okay, we can check on that.
Kathy?
And I just have a procedural question. So this grant goes over a period of years. Does the grant talk about when we'll get check-ins from CU and from the district so that we kind of have a sense of the progress and what's going on?
Not that I'm aware of tonight, but I will check that tomorrow.
Okay,
So your
that's-
question specifically is what are the check-in points for this program?
With the board, just so.
Okay.
I don't want to micromanage. I'd just like
Right.
to know how things are progressing
that
over
makes
the period
sense.
of years. That's all. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Kathy. So a few follow-ups there, Dr. Stevenson. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Hearing none, Laura, would you please call the vote on the motion to approve the consent agenda?
Belval is not here. Benford. Fuqua.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt.
Yes.
Marquis. Myers.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next item is an action item, 9.1, special education, basic reading adoption. Dr. Stevenson?
As you are all well aware, we have had a great deal of community interest in what types of materials are we using with our students who have special learning needs. So the Special Education Department has done thorough investigation, which has involved both staff and community, and they are bringing forth their recommendations this evening. So I will turn it over to a very competent team.
Hi, we're just having a technical, there we go, okay. Hi, Board President Fuqua, Board of Education, Dr. Stevenson. My name is Dennis Rastatter. I'm the Executive Director of Special Education for the district. It's my pleasure to be in front of you tonight. I'm going to introduce my colleague.
I'm Michelle Brenner. I am the Director of Special Education for Instructional Development. And we're trying to get our presentation up because they got closed on us, so we'll use the PDF form.
Okay, that works for me. So I'd like to start also just to say, I've heard a lot of us talk about collaboration this evening, and this is truly, truly an effort of collaboration. Thanks to our parent community to come in and work with us. Our literacy department and Sam Messier and Instructional Services and Equity it's all been a team effort of all of us working together to get to where we are tonight. I'd also like to thank you, Board of Education, for providing the opportunity for us to provide this level of support to our students with dyslexia and other reading needs. So thank you very much for that. So we talked a little bit about why, again, the purpose of this materials adoption and why we're here today. There is an identified gap of instruction for students and really an identified need for evidence-based interventions for students in grades K to 12 who had needs in the area of specific learning disability and basic reading. And I want to clarify the term of basic reading. And so as a reminder, back in April, I prepared a memo to the Board of Education around really identifying the characteristics of a student with a specific learning disability and the 8 components under which a student would potentially qualify for special education services. One of those areas is in basic reading, which really in special ed lingo is around phonics, phonemic awareness, and decoding, or lack of skills in those areas. And so when we talk about basic reading in this presentation, just please recognize that it's in a specific recognition of those with specific learning disabilities. Our hope in this implementation is really to work to close the gap between students with disabilities and their general ed peers. Tom, or Mr. Myers, you mentioned it at the beginning, really about, our ultimate hope is to provide services in place across our general ed and special ed systems that don't require a need for special education identification. But in the interim of that, our goal here is to address needs, individual needs in children as they arise. Also, having common intervention materials across our system allows for us to really ensure or better provide for fidelity of implementation of the work that we do. And so we're excited about this opportunity and presentation of the Wilson product to you today. I'm going to have Michelle go through with you the process, because she really, kudos to Michelle, as she has really taken the bull by the horn, so to speak, and just got us to where we are today in basically two short months. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you. So I first want to assure you that we went through a selection process aligned with board policy, IJ,
I also want to note, it's not listed on this slide, but special ed doesn't do anything in isolation. We're a part of our system, and so we've been working closely with instructional services. Angel Stoba and I have been co-facilitating the dyslexia advisory team and working together on everything here. So there's been a lot of people talking about special ed, but we are working absolutely in collaboration and not doing this in isolation. I want you to also know, as you've recognized tonight, that we are expediting this due to the urgency in our community. You've all heard a lot about that, and so typically we know this process takes longer to adopt materials, and we worked really hard to do this pretty quickly. That started in May, this last May 15th, 2017, where we met with our dyslexia advisory team, and we got feedback from them on a lot of things, but in particular this materials adoption, what was the scope and what were the type of materials they wanted us to look at. That helped us then in creating a sort of shorter process because we use their feedback, we use the Rocky Mountain Dyslexia Association feedback as well, and we're able to bring forward and refine the materials quicker as to what we would bring ahead into this process. Then on June 15th, 2017, we brought together a committee and we did this in one meeting. Very positive feedback about it, but we kind of, again, expedited the process into one meeting. At that meeting, we evaluated proposals and materials provided by specific publishers. We allowed each participant to personally review each material that was proposed. They got to get their hands on it and look at it, and I think one of the more exciting things were they sat at tables and they talked to each other. So our community and our teachers and our principals got to look at these materials and talk about what they meant for their students together. It was very powerful to watch. And then finally, that group made final recommendations that would go help us in determining what went forward to our public review in July. So then the next part of the process was the public review. We opened this to public review for the month of July. And then based on all of that feedback, myself, the Director of Special Ed for Instructional Development, So myself, the Director of Special Ed, sorry, it's hard to read my own title here. So I was available for questions during this time frame. That's what I was trying to say. And then what I wanted to follow up with that is that then Angel and I sat down and looked at all of that feedback and really put that together in what was going to be proposed as our recommendation to you. So the committee choice, as you've heard today already, was that we consider adopting Wilson Reading System for our elementary grades, and I want to make it clear that that covers grades 2 through 5 as far as an intervention system. And then in our secondary schools, the recommendation is the Wilson product called Just Words. So you can see it in graphic format. What we did was we asked people to complete the document, the informational forms that align with board policy, the exhibits, and then we also asked them to rank the interventions or the approaches that we were looking at. And so what you see here is the ranking that they provided. So for the elementary group, they first had looked at 3 sets of materials, and they pretty quickly ruled one out, so they didn't actually rank the third choice. And of those choices, Wilson Reading System, for 80% of them, was their first choice. Secondary was a little cleaner even, and 100% of those that ranked the materials, and they had 3 choices that they looked at, they ranked that Just Words was their preference, their top choice. So we got that really clear feedback. We reviewed the public review and the feedback from the committee, and now we're recommending that, or requesting that you approve these materials today. So that starts our implementation plan. So if approved, we would go ahead and start ordering materials very quickly here in August so that we could start this plan in September. I should note that one of the reasons for expediting this request is also about the Wilson Reading System. So you'll see here in a moment that there's a certification process for the Wilson Reading System, and that has to start within the first 5 weeks of school. So we're getting close to that, and in order to order materials, identify the teachers for that small certification group, and get them started within 5 weeks is a very quick turnover. We can certainly do it, but that's why we're also requesting to expedite this. So the plan would be that in September, we would train 30 elementary special education resource teachers and distribute the materials for the Wilson reading system to them at that time. We would also start with planning with the secondary principals. So the thing about secondary is, in talking with principals and teachers, they need a little bit longer runway in order to roll this out, because they need to identify who the kids are, and they will likely need to do a little bit more assessment to identify the right grouping of kids. They also need to identify the academic support class where this will occur, and who the teacher is for training. And that's just gonna take a little bit more time than at elementary, where the special ed teachers kind of have the say in when their groups are occurring. So we're gonna do our planning with them in September, do the training for secondary in October, and distribute materials at that time, and then go ahead and make sure that by second semester, secondary resource teachers are ready to implement this intervention. Other parts of the implementation plan are that fall. We didn't identify a date because we don't have it on the calendar yet, but in the fall we would also do some training with our principals and our administrators so they understand what it is to lead a school that has Wilson intervention in it. And then that cohort group that I mentioned, the certification group, we need to identify 10 special ed resource teachers who will participate in a Wilson Level 1 certification program. And that's a very extensive full year plan where Wilson is coaching them, observing them, providing additional training to them so that they can be certified at that level. It's a much more extensive training, and we'll offer that to 10 elementary resource teachers, and they can opt in because there will be after school things, so they need to know that they have the time to do so. We will also, with the other group, so there's about 60 teachers we're hoping to train. The other group, we will have other coaching opportunities. They just won't be as extensive as the certification group. The next part of the plan would be that we would continue it in fall 2018. So we know we have the capacity to train 30 at each level, elementary and secondary, but there are more special ed resource teachers. So in the fall of 2018, we would continue this process and train another cohort group. So that brings us to the cost of this proposal. So this includes materials, professional development, and some assessments that Wilson requires for some of their placement and grouping. And so to honor Bill Sutter, who asked me to give some details on this, I'm gonna tell you what's on the slide and give you a little bit more detail. So we put in here $161,000. We've actually dropped $1,000 off of that. We're now saying $160,000 over 3 years to get this rolled out to every resource teacher in our district. So every resource teacher would have a kit and would be trained, and we'd have a group of 20 to 30 who would be certified. So that's a pretty big endeavor. It's gonna cost us $160,000 a year for sure for the 17-18 and the 18-19 school year. And we hope we have it completed by then, but we also wanna say that maybe it'll take us 19 and 20 to do this as well. We know that the 17-18 funds are there in the budget that you allocated already under the dyslexia programming budget, and we don't yet know where we're accounting for that in the future years. The little bit more detail to put in there for you is that in your board docs, you may see other numbers. I think we used $117,000, and maybe more specifically, Bill Sutter, $116,810.35. Not sure what you got to say, but that is what's listed in our master services agreement with Wilson. That includes the actual materials and the training that they would come in and provide because they need to teach us their expertise. There are other numbers that are out there that includes some of these additional assessments that they are requiring us to include. And that $160,000 really includes the products that they provide, the training that they provide, that assessment I just mentioned, and it also includes the cost of the subs that we need to fund to get people out of the classroom. So that's the whole package. I think I'm passing it over to Dennis now.
And so what is our expected system-wide impact? And so first and foremost, it's really about improved progress on IEP goals for students with disabilities. Again, provide a consistent use of evidence-based practices for students across our system. Again, allowing Michelle and our other special ed specialists to really provide for fidelity of implementation across our system. We hope that that this will align with the universal and targeted materials that are to be adopted in this area. So we're really looking for a very cohesive system. And again, most importantly, is that explicit and systemic teaching and learning of decoding skills for our most intensive students and meeting their basic reading needs. With that, I just would like to again say thank you to all of you for your time, to Angel and Sam in our community for their support and collaboration. Again, this was really an effort and a great example of community coming together for the benefit of our students. So thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Should I move this item prior to discussion? Yeah, so need a motion to approve the special education basic reading adoption. Motion from first, a motion from Kathy, second from Tina. Discussion.
Mr. President, I would say that I came from a system that used this extensively at K-12 level, and we had an awfully lot of children who were in the Wilson program, and I had the opportunity to observe it at times. It's interesting, and it's not your usual way of teaching reading, but it was a system we used extensively. So I've had experience with it, and I think you've got a very fair presentation from the staff tonight.
And was it working for you in Jeffco?
Did it work? Well, we were using it for probably 6 of my years as superintendent, 6 or 7, and it's spread throughout the district. So we started out in some schools, and by the time I left Jeffco, we were pretty much in all the schools with it. Now, it's not for every child. You have to do really careful diagnosis and decision-making around what's the best method for a child. So children who have reading difficulties, there are a variety of things that contribute to that. So Wilson was one system that worked for many of our children. So yes, we used it extensively. So I've had lots of experience with it. I haven't told you guys that, I'm sorry. But you know, I really felt like it was a process that needed to work its way through this system without any influence from me, and I think it has done that. And I think it's one of the systems that should be in place for the right children. It's not for every child. It's not for every child who has difficulty with reading, but it is the right system for the right children.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Tina?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and again for all the collaboration that went into this. I had 2 questions. The first is for the elementary, it says 2nd through 5th, but in general it was referred to as K through 5. Mm-hmm. Can this be used for K and 1?
So it's not designed for K and 1. As Dennis spoke to earlier, this isn't capturing all of our students, and we know that there are kids who have comprehension needs that aren't really captured in this intervention. So that was some of the discussion that we had with our parent community in particular, that their kids in kindergarten are they're not going to be able to be placed in this intervention system as it's designed. We do believe that as people are trained and learn these strategies, that of course it's going to benefit all the students they support, but we would not recommend that a KM1 student be in the intervention system because it's not evidence-based at those levels.
Okay, so that will be more coming forward, what to do in that for those kids in
yes,
kindergarten.
It's an area we need to continue to work on.
Okay, and then my other question is, I know a lot of teachers have gone through training on Orton-Gillingham, or is that correct? And so does that complement this? Is that training, or are they going to have to go to a new training on Wilson? How does that work?
I'm looking to
Yes,
Dennis.
yeah,
I
go ahead,
believe we're
yes.
going to have Angel talk a little, share more about that, but the answer is yes, they are complementary. Wilson is an Orton-Gillingham based.
It's just what I
Yes.
was
Go ahead.
going to say. Wilson is based on the Orton-Gillingham philosophy, so there is a lot of correlation between them. We wanted to ensure that we had materials and interventions that were appropriate for targeted students in targeted intervention as well as intensive intervention, and have a variety of options for our students.
Okay, and just somewhat of a non sequitur, but a friend of mine just signed up for the Orton-Gillingham training in the fall and was so pleased that 3 of the sessions will be on Saturdays and won't interfere with her week. So.
I'm sure they're pleased with that.
Really was.
Thanks, Tina. Other questions, comments? Kathy?
So I am picking up that this works. Sorry, I don't know where the feedback's coming from. So this works, this has been talked about in terms of dyslexia, but it works for students with other kinds of reading challenges. And does the assessment that you give also pick up other kinds of reading challenges that this program is designed for? I was just trying to get a sense of who else it would pick up in the, kind of in the assessment net, and who it would be able to serve other than just the, not just, but the kids with dyslexia, but kids with other reading disabilities and challenges.
It really focuses on those kids who are struggling, who are struggling with decoding, phonics, or phonemic awareness. So, so that's really the target, not necessarily specifically kids who are identified with dyslexia or not. It's really about the areas of reading in which they struggle, not so much the identification specifically.
Thanks, Kathy. Tom?
So over the past couple of years, as we've been talking about dyslexia, the board has heard over and over about Orton Gillingham, so I was a bit surprised at the choice of Wilson. Not that I'm questioning it, but I would just, I'd like to know some more about why it was chosen over Orton Gillingham.
Sure, and I would invite Angel again, because we've had a lot of discussion about this, actually. So we brought forward, and please just jump in. We brought forward Orton Gillingham as an approach to this committee as well, which is a little challenging, right? Because it's not a set of materials that, there are some materials, but it's not as robust as others, because it's really about teaching the approach, and it's a more in-depth training in the approach, but not a product or actual materials. And so we brought that forward for people to consider and give feedback on, at the same time as Wilson and some other things. The difference is that Wilson is Orton Gillingham based. It is based in that approach, but it also is a program and includes the materials. So our feedback from most of the people, as you saw by those graphs, were our teachers need not just the approach, but they also need the materials so that they can teach with fidelity. What would you add to that?
Just that special ed teachers did weigh in on wanting that program, that set of materials that would support them throughout the instructional episodes with students. And as Michelle said, Orton Gillingham is an approach, and so our teachers go in deep on the theory. And through the work that we're doing with training the Orton Gillingham teachers, we are going to also be looking at what materials we would pull together that would be common. So at the end of our training, we will have sets of materials for BVSD using the Orton Gillingham approach, but we really wanted to make sure that the special ed teachers were receiving the materials right away to begin implementation right away.
Good, thank you. That explains a lot. One other question. I know the need for expediency and why you did the way you did, and congratulations and kudos to all of you for working so hard to make that happen, as soon as you're going to. But my experience has been when school is not in session, you don't have a lot of public paying attention. So having public review of materials in July, you don't usually get much participation. So I was curious about how much participation did you get?
So we had 4 responses, I believe. I'm certain of that, actually. We had 4 responses, and my understanding is there's not always a lot of public feedback in that particular approach. We did get a lot of public feedback through our advisory team and many discussions there, through personal conversations, especially with BV Kid members. And we also had community members on the committee. So I think we tried to mediate that through a variety of approaches, but certainly, yes, it's hard to get people out in the summer.
Shelley?
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very well done. I just have one quick question. How many kids do you think you'll be touching in the next school year?
All right, we'll do some.
Yeah. I'm a little hesitant to really take even a guess at that. I mean, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of, if I remember correctly, 1,400 students who are identified as having a specific learning disability in the area of reading. This will touch a percentage of those. That's part of where that assessment is so important, that we're going to start to roll out with our kids, so we make sure we get the right kids in the right program, in this instance. And so I don't really know at this time. I don't have enough information to answer that.
So I may have missed it, but is there anything about assessment in here? Like what tool we're using, or?
We didn't put it in this presentation. We've been working on that in the last couple of days.
Okay.
So the Wilson company recommends the WIST assessment, the Word Identification and Spelling Test, and it requires it for a subset of these individuals. So we're going to make sure that there's a copy available per school, because the Wilson the company uses that to identify the right grouping of kids and the right students for this intervention. So we're going to use their recommendations in using that assessment and for those purposes. They also have an assessment called the WADE, which is more of an embedded sort of pre and post assessment that's free, and it comes with the Wilson Reading System intervention. So we'll teach people how to use that for pre and post assessment.
So we'll know how they did based on that exam?
Yeah, we'll have that individual data.
Yeah.
And to your first question, I wouldn't venture to say a number, but just so you know that if we train 30 secondary teachers, they can serve up to 15 students with the Wilson Just Words product. That's why we went with that versus the Wilson Reading System at middle and high school, because they can serve a larger group as long as they're putting kids appropriately in that group, and that assessment I just noted will help us identify the right group. So we hope that 10 to 15 students at each school will be able to participate in that this year at secondary level, and I don't know what the estimate would be at elementary.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're picking up the kids at the secondary level. I've had a fear as we've gone through this that somehow those kids wouldn't get picked up, so that's great news. So thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Follow-ups from Tina and then Kathy.
Yeah, I forgot to ask, for children who are learning a second language, how does the special education department, work with the ELL group? And then I'm assuming all these materials are available in other languages to serve students. So could you speak to a little bit on, like, whether you're served by two individuals, or is it layered?
So that's a great question. So it's a complicated question, quite frankly, because what the special ed department has to do is make sure that language is ruled out as a factor in identification of a disability. And so sometimes that takes time, that takes close, in terms of, and we do a lot of comparison to our kids who are learning English as a second language to other kids who came into the country at the same time. Are they progressing at the same rate? What other factors are we noticing that makes a kid maybe stand out to a teacher, an English language development teacher or emerging bilingual teacher? And then it's really about collaboration with that staff in that school. And so our school psychologist will then, if there's a concern for a potential disability, our school psychologist then works closely not only with the special ed evaluation team, but also the English language development team in that building to make sure that we are truly, truly ruling out language as an issue instead of it, to make sure that it is truly a disability and not a language-based issue. In terms of the Wilson product being in another language, I don't know. Do we know? Yeah.
I do know. So
Okay,
it is not available. We did in another language. It's available only in English. We did bring in our bilingual schools. We had, I think, 2 of the 3 represented on our committee, and we were very intentional about asking them questions about this. Their feedback was actually that they believe that this was their preferred intervention over the others that we looked at for bilingual schools, because Orton Gillingham, as an example, doesn't have any materials, so that having visuals to support the English language is more of a benefit to them. And then we're committed to keeping that conversation open with them, because if this doesn't meet their needs, then we need to look at what else is available. Angel and I have also had conversations about that. There's not much available in Spanish, as an example, but let alone other languages. So it's a gap not just for us, but for this community currently.
So the training, as I understand it, is just for those resource teachers. What kind of training will there be for the general ed teachers if any, so they even know about this and how it's going to be implemented?
So, and I'll again invite Angel up for, so we really are partners. So special ed our training will be for special educators, and we're bringing our principals in, and we have to figure out the date for that, if approved. And we'll do some training for them to understand the system and how they can lead a school that has Wilson intervention in it. But as far as general ed teachers, we're not having any training for them about this particular product.
What we will be doing through what we call literacy leads, we have literacy leads in each of our elementary schools, is that we will be supporting them in understanding the Orton-Gillingham philosophy, and that special ed will be using Wilson, so that as they go back to their buildings and they're collaborating with the special ed teachers, they're aware of the system.
And this is only being applied to students who have already been identified, so the students who are in general ed classrooms who might be struggling, that's a separate issue yet to be addressed.
We've started with the training the point teachers in 6 of our elementary schools, and also cross-training our LLI teachers. We've started that work and working toward the materials adoption in general ed.
Thanks, Kathy. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you for your presentation. And Laura, will you please call the vote on the motion to approve the special education basic reading adoption?
Belval is not present. Benford. Fuqua.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gebhardt. Marquis. Myers.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is a study item 10.1, request for proposal for superintendent search. So board members, in your board docs, you have the RFP, the proposed RFP for a firm to assist us with our search for the next permanent superintendent. Do you have any questions, comments, and who would be the appropriate staff member to address those to, Dr. Stevenson? Is that Leslie? Yeah. Thank you. Tom.
So looking through the RFP document here, how does this differ from the one we used last time around?
We looked at 3 or 4 different school districts, Jeffco, Weld County, a couple others, maybe Littleton, and I know Colorado Springs District 11, and really looked at what they did versus what we did last time. We did really draw from RFP from last time, but we took out some of the detail, allowing the responders to give us their best practice and best advice on timelines and the search. So we did take a little bit of the detail out so that the responders could give us their best thoughts.
Yeah, it looked like it was a little more open or broad than what I recall
yes.
from before.
Right.
And then is the idea when they bring back these and we can collate those responses and then negotiate, the details with the particular provider that we think is best. Is that the idea?
Yes, we can. So Molly McLaughlin, who's our Director of Procurement, will help the board as you go through the selection process. You'll have a criteria sheet so that you can score each one of the proposals, and she'll help you walk you through that. And then if you have questions for the vendors, she'll help the board with anything around that.
And I saw a provision too for best and final. So if the board then wants to add on or ask for additional services, then they can come back with the best and final for those, right?
Yes, this draft includes a fixed price quote, but the board, if they wanted to change that, could certainly make any changes to this draft.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Other questions or comments? I have one that I'm just putting out there to my board colleagues. As proposed, this would go out on the 16th of August, and we would set a deadline of September 13th. I don't know what best practice is, but I sort of feel antsy to get moving on this, and I'm wondering about shortening the window of response. So I'm just putting it out there to all of you, and I don't know, Leslie, if that's not advisable or.
Sure, I think that would be fine. We put the 16th because just in case the board wanted to discuss it more at their work session on the 15th. We could speed that up if there's not comments this evening. I know that Molly will want to get confidentiality statements from each of you and make sure, we assume that all the board members would want to be on the committee, but if not, we just need to know who the committee will be so that she can get that put together.
And my question was also on the back end of that, like if we only give, say, a 2-week window to respond so that we can get the search process underway faster. I don't know what standard practice is in terms of these kinds of RFPs.
That may be a little short. Bill, what do you think?
I just threw that out there. But
Yeah.
Standard is 4 weeks.
Yeah.
4 weeks.
2 weeks is a little short.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that the notice gets out to the appropriate number of firms and they can put together a solid response.
So, but if we were to say this looks okay tonight, we could at least get it out sooner, and then the 4 weeks would move back accordingly.
Sure.
Yeah. What do you think, board members?
Well, I just have a question. So you have a list of firms that this is going to?
We do, yes,
On that list of firms, do you have any minority-owned firms that are going?
I don't know that. Do you know that, Bill?
No, it'll go out on the Rocky Mountain BidNet, which goes out to thousands of companies out there, and so the appropriate ones respond.
I'd be fine with it.
You're fine with, yeah. Yeah, and I'll check in with Jenny tomorrow on it as well. Any other questions, comments, board members? Assuming our board member who's absent is okay with it, are we feeling okay with it? Do you feel you need more time? You have additional questions? Okay. Shelley? Richard? Okay. So I think I'll check in with you tomorrow after I speak with Jenny, and then hopefully we can get this out as soon as possible. And thank you for your work on it. All right, board members, agenda setting will be held prior to our quarterly planning session next Tuesday. So I think we have that on for 4 p.m. next Tuesday, Laura, is that right? Agenda setting?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so any items you want to discuss or make sure we talk about there, if you can't attend the meeting, please contact me, and if you'll copy Laura and Dr. Stevenson. I think with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.